For me, as a humanist, I think the best way to try to understand the world and work out whether something is true or not is by using reason and evidence. And these are both fundamental to science and to the scientific method of testing theories. As I use science to help me work out what I believe, then it's not possible for me to believe in anything that science would contradict. And I agree with the 18th century philosopher David Hume, who said that a wise man proportions his belief to the evidence. For me, there is no evidence of anything supernatural in the world, like gods or an afterlife. Similarly to how I don't believe that I had a life before I was born, I also don't believe that I will have another life after I die. As I don't believe in any gods, I'm an atheist. But I also don't think it's possible to prove there isn't a God. For example, I don't think it's possible to come up with a scientific experiment to test whether or not God exists. Thus, I am also an agnostic. But one of the main things I'd like to get across is that as I think that I only have one life, makes it all the more important to try and get as much out of it as I can and to be as happy as possible. And scientific evidence and personal experience demonstrates that one of the best ways to find happiness in life is to help other people to be happy, and it can even help us to live longer.
For our ancient ancestors, survival was full of uncertainties. There were droughts and floods. Their crops could be ruined by storms. People died of their family and friends of mysterious illnesses. And they didn't understand why this happened. And not knowing the cause, they put it down to a supernatural being, a malevolent spirit or an angry God. But these days, thanks to science, we know so much more. We've mapped the Earth. We know that Earth is a planet that revolves around the sun. We know when it was formed. We know how life came into existence. First bacteria, then multi-celled animals, and then mammals. We know when the first humans stalked the planet. We know how the body works, and we've invented drugs and vaccines to solve diseases. We understand electromagnetic waves, and we can send signals all around the world. And we've even put a man on the moon. Humanism, I think, in its current form, wouldn't have existed without the knowledge of science. We would never have been able to answer the why and how questions that the religious people would have asked us. But with this knowledge comes great power. We can bend nature now to our will. And it's our responsibility to preserve that nature for future generations.
Humanists believe that science and reason are best at explaining the world and reality around us using observation and evidence, like the fossils I have here in front of me. We see the world as a natural place with no discernible purpose. As such, humanism is a non-religious approach to life, and we put scientific endeavour based on evidence and reason absolutely central to the humanist worldview. Since the Enlightenment 400 years ago, human life has flourished and improved enormously, driven by the democratization of knowledge since the invention of the printing press. Modern medicine, our hard-won social freedoms and economic development means that most of us have a standard of living today that even billionaires could not aspire to 150 years ago. Humanists believe that much of this progress has been predicated on humanist principles such as using reason, evidence and science and technology to improve the quality of our lives. Humanism is not a religion, as we do not believe in a God or supernatural element to reality. However, humanists do wonder at the beauty of the universe and also at the mystery of existence. But we also observe the brutal struggle to survive in the natural world. And as a result, we do celebrate how mankind has been able to transcend these brutal primitive origins. Humanists do have a deep faith in the innate natural goodness in humans, our evolved sense of altruism, our kindness, and our shared humanity that help us to overcome our darker primitive instincts. Humanism is therefore a positive life stance which puts human beings and other living things absolutely at the centre of our moral outlook. Humanists also actively encourage critical thinking based on reason and evidence, using a balance between our hearts and our heads in human affairs. Humanists are atheist, agnostic, and secular. We believe that there should be freedom for all religions, but also freedom from religion, and believe that secular democracy and evidence-based science is the best way to manage human affairs that mankind has so far developed.
Well, I'm sure it was my science that led me to become a humanist. So science is about examining things closely and looking for patterns and explanations to account for the patterns, and then evidence to support or contradict the explanations. And when there's uncertainty, we look for new ways to test a theory, and if there's a contradiction, we change the theory and we test again. And people think science is hard, but it isn't really. Police and lawyers and newspaper reporters and anyone seeking the truth uses the same ideas. The key thing is to keep testing a story or theory using critical thinking and actively seeking evidence to confirm or deny the story. So I think science is just a common sense way of trying to get at the truth. So how does science interact with my belief? When I was still at school, I had plenty of subjective evidence, or so I thought, for the existence of God. Everyone I knew believed in God. And I had feelings of awe and excitement in church, especially when taking Christian communion for the first time. But when I started to think critically, I realized that the church ceremonies are designed to induce just those feelings. My feelings showed that the ceremonies worked, and I felt they weren't convincing evidence for the existence of God. Continuing to believe would have also meant accepting extraordinary claims such as life after death, virgin birth, miracles, and so on. And extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and I couldn't find that evidence. So in this way, the scientific approach made me decide that I couldn't believe in God. I became an atheist, and soon after that I found humanism. I find that science is compatible with my humanist beliefs. I think that all that happens is natural, and I felt no need for supernatural explanations. And I just love science's creation story, beginning with the evidence of cosmology that gives us galaxies and stars and planets like the Earth. And the story continues after life formed on Earth and evolved into many plant and animal species we see today. For me, that's a convincing creation story based on the evidence of geology and archaeology and chemistry and botany and biology. Of course, I think there are things that science doesn't yet know. Was it a big bang or a big bounce at the start of our universe 14 billion years ago? What caused the first living thing, something able to reproduce itself, to emerge from non-living materials? How does my brain build my sense of identity? I'm excited we don't know these answers, but I'm quite sure that through questioning and using science, we'll get to understand more and more. Until recently, we scientists struggled to deal with emotions, beliefs, or the nature of ethical behavior. But in the last 50 years, advances in psychology and neuroscience have begun to show how our emotions and our morality developed. We can now see how the golden rule, treat others as you want to be treated, emerges naturally from the human need to cooperate. As a humanist, I look to science to increase our understanding, and I see no need for supernatural explanations.